All right, and we are live streamed across all platforms. Thank you all. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. All right, so we are excited to have you join us and look forward to sharing with you this initiative that the DC Office of Planning is working on. Tonight, we will tell you about, sorry, one second. We are excited to share with you two new subjects, and we are going to be designing commemorative works for, and also tell you about the next opportunity to stay involved with this initiative. So we can move over to slide 3, please. We would love to introduce our amazing team behind Commemorate DC. This team is made up of our amazing Office of Planning staff, as well as our design team, AECOM, DC Squared, excuse me, and Brick and Story. And so before we jump in, I would like to introduce Felicia Wilson, Associate Director of Urban Design with the DC's Office of Planning, to welcome you all to tonight's event.
Thank you, Jatik. Good evening, everyone, all of our viewers, and welcome to the Commemorate DC's first series of a year of exciting events. Here at the DC Office of Planning, we believe public spaces in the city should promote connection and well-being among our residents and celebrate diverse cultures. One way we do this is through commemorative works. And commemorative works are the visual art installations that tell our stories in parks, plazas, and along streets and in avenues. These symbols of our values and shared experiences cultivate a sense of community, pride, and remind us of significant people and events that have shaped the communities in which we live. For example, the mural of Dorothy Height in the Congress Heights neighborhood honors one of the most influential women who continued the fight for equality in the modern civil rights movement, which is pictured here. Another example are the bronze medallions in the sidewalks on 7th and T Streets Northwest. They honor 15 Black musicians outside of the Howard Theater, a venue that hosted many Black musicians and was open to Black audiences when DC was segregated. One goal of our initiative is to help residents understand the difference between a commemorative work and a monument and or memorial. Does anyone want to share what they think the difference is? So commemorative work highlights persons, structures, places, events of significance that focus on achievement, whereas a monument or memorial typically honors a singular figure of notoriety and frequently focuses on remembrance or loss. While both of these honor stories that need to be told, commemorative works honor them in a different way than in monuments. So you may be asking yourself, why are commemorative works important and how do they impact you? So, DC is often thought of as a city of monuments, but commemorative works in our city honor subjects of national importance, and very few honor the lived experiences and contributions of Black Washingtonians and people of color across the district. To address this issue, the Office of Planning launched Commemorate DC to identify local people, places, and events as subjects for new commemorative works. We're paying special attention to the wards with the least amount of commemorative works, and those are in wards 4, 5, 7, and 8. In 2024, which was Commemorate DC's inaugural year, we teamed up with community organizations in those wards to collect inputs from residents and develop 4 commemorative works. For 2025, after a months-long nomination and a selection process, we are excited to share the selected subjects with you tonight. I am looking forward to hearing from our subject nominators who will be sharing history through their lived experience. And they are Kenneth Carroll and Denise Rolock Barnes. Most importantly, I would like to thank you, our residents and our community partners who have dedicated time and effort and are watching now to honor the history of our community. Today's kickoff is just the beginning of this process. You will hear shortly from other members of our OP team. We'll invite you to join us over the next few months for creative conversations about the designs for these commemorative works. Thank you again. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague Marvin Hodges, who will give you some information about the program and our goals for the year. Marvin, you are muted.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. So thank you again. Um, what we're trying to do today is find a way for people to participate in some of the exciting discussions and memories and insights of Commemorate DC, which focuses on commemorating local people, events, and organizations as a way to share the values and history and make sure that DC residents feel their stories are told and remembered in the places that they live. Last year, our community partners set out to get your ideas on who should be commemorated in wards 4, 5, 7, and 8. We received over 100 nominations and with amazing stories about DC residents involved in civil rights, arts and culture, community activism, and health and education. The nominees needed to have been deceased for at least 10 years, and the events needed to have happened 10 years ago. And this is what we found. Um, so, uh, Now that you know a little bit about the goals of the program, we'd like to show you how we are meeting those goals through Commemorate DC. We kicked off last year's program with some amazing subjects: the DC Caribbean Carnival for Ward 4, the enslaved people that built the US Capitol for Ward 5, the Black Entrepreneurs of Deanwood for Ward 7, and the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program for Ward 8. We wanted to hear from all of you, and we did just that. Each ward hosted numerous engagement events, and we partnered with local organizations to make sure we captured your stories. We got your feedback and on the designs encouraged from residents to attend some of our different events around the city. Some of our favorite memories from last year were getting a custom airbrush t-shirt from Kalik Crosby, last year's artist for Ward 8, and the community design workshop tabling at the Caribbean Cultural Concert hosted by the Mayor's Office of Caribbean and Cultural Affairs, or MOCA, and partnering with the Congress Heights Main Street during Art All Night to unveil the final designs. And speaking of the final designs, here are an example of kind of what we finalized last year. All four of those wards are represented here, including a site plan and a final rendering. So if you haven't had a chance, please head to our website after the event and check out these final designs. And so that brings us into 2025. By now, you've learned about the initiative and you've learned about the difference between a commemorative work and a memorial. You've heard about the project goals and how our agency is meeting them. And the last thing I want to share with you is how it all comes together. So this spring and summer, we will be working with AECOM, a design firm, and two public artist teams to create concepts for two commemorative works honoring the nominees. We've been working with the community organizations of DC Squared, who are functioning as our arts advisor, and the members of this project team who were introduced earlier in this program. We are finalizing our public artists now so that they will be announced soon. And we've also worked with the DC Department of Transportation and Parks and Rec to identify subjects that are associated with each of these subjects. Over the next few months, we will be holding public meetings to learn more about how DC residents relate to these subjects. We'll get public commenting on the concepts and develop one preferred concept for each site. All of those concept plans will go to the DC's Commemorative Works Committee, made up of DC agencies and residents of DC, for review before the preferred concept is finalized in September of this year. At that time, we'll assess options for pursuing next steps to continue design and possible funding, so stay tuned. And now we'll hear more about the 2025 subjects from Jatik and our special guests.
Thank you, Marvin, for that. So last year, we received over 100 nominations and chose the top two in each ward for the community to vote on. This year's nominations are shown on the screen. I'm excited to announce the two subjects for this year's 2025 Commemorate DC initiative. We would also like to direct your attention to an amazing resource that we will use to help identify the sites across the city that these commemorative works can be located on. Our agency uses a locate document, which details different sites across the district, ownership, and other information for community members, organizations, and agencies to use for future works. It is important that the commemorative works are designed and built in a location that was relevant to their legacy. And with that being said, I'm now excited to introduce the two subjects for this year's initiative and the award that they are associated with. Our first subject was a literary giant whose words captured the soul of African American life, especially in the South. As DC's first poet laureate, Brown used his writing to uplift the voices of everyday people, blending folklore, jazz rhythms, and sharp social commentary. His work told the stories that history books often ignored. To honor his legacy, we reflect on how poetry and storytelling continue to shape our communities today. We know that a story is best told by someone with a personal connection to the subject, and I'm excited to introduce Kenneth Carroll, who will share more about Sterling Allen Brown and his legacy. Kenneth is a native Washingtonian, a youth development specialist, educator, and literary activist. His writings are widely published. He received the White House Humanities Award for his youth literacy work while director of DC Writers Corps. He is former director of the African American Writers Guild and has performed at the Kennedy Center, Library of Congress, universities, and cultural institutions around the country. His latest chapbook is centered around a family tragedy that helped to desegregate Washington, D.C., and is entitled The Jim Crow Drowning of Kenneth Carroll. He is a longtime Ward 5 resident and was the former paperboy for Sterling Brown when he lived on Kearny Street Northeast. So we would now like to introduce Kenneth.
All right, thank you, and thank all of you for having me. So this was really special when your office contacted me and said that Sterling Brown was going to be commemorated. Sterling Brown, as you mentioned, is one of the seminal figures in Washington D.C. of both literary activism and scholarship. And actually, I'll be doing in September, there'll be a day-long celebration of Sterling Brown from scholars all over the country and from DC scholars and writers. Um, and as you said, Sterling Brown was significant to me because growing up in Ward 5, I was one of those kids who like spent all my available time in Woodridge Public Library on Rhode Island Avenue. And it was striking after meeting the great uh, director and Haile Garima and watching his major documentary on Sterling Brown called After Winter. I noticed in the documentary that Sterling Brown was talking about a paperboy who annoyed him by throwing the paper up from Kearny Street onto his porch and hitting his screen. And I realized at that point, that's the house I used to serve for several years. And if you know the homes on Kearny Street, you have to walk up a whole bunch of steps to get to the top of the porch. And so as a paper boy with over 100 people to serve in Ward 5, I just had to sling them things up there. And but he was real important because at Woolridge Library is where I really discovered him. And his seminal works as After Winter, Old Limb, and of course, you know, probably his opus, Strong Men. And you discover the kind of folk history, how he gave voice to Black people all over the country, and as you say, especially in the South. But also, Brown was significant in while there was this great celebration of the Harlem Renaissance, and that's celebrated Harlem as kind of like the locus of Black literary creation and other artistic creation, Brown never saw that as the sole place where Black culture was emanating in the 20s and 30s. And Brown was either in Virginia or here at Howard University, where he was nourishing what would become generations of great writers like Amiri Baraka, Lucille Clifton, who came to Howard University because of what it meant as a mecca for Black thought and Black art and Black activism. And so it has just been, for me, a major, you know, he's been a major literary figure for me as a writer. And also, when I taught at Duke Ellington School for the Arts, it was Sterling Brown who I kept bringing students back to and saying, you know, this is a voice from our own community who raised us up, Black people. And I gave them a famous quote from, you know, a number of artists who came through Howard University, especially Ossie Davis, who talked about coming to Howard University and being from the country and having Sterling Brown come to him and say, your voice as part of the Black literary tradition, your voice is as valuable as any voice here. And he credits Brown with helping him to find his voice as he began to write plays and stories. And so I'm just honored that, you know, we're celebrating Sterling Brown, uh, you know, first poet laureate of Washington, D.C. in 1984, Ethelbert Miller and James Early. These folks got together to make sure that he served as the poet laureate. And then when I took over the African American Writers Guild, we were able to hold a celebration in conjunction with the Library of Congress, where we celebrated Sterling Brown along with Callaloo Magazine. And we had Max Roach and Amiri Baraka as our celebrants who talked about and performed works of Sterling Brown and talked about his importance. So again, thank you for allowing me to be part of this. Again, as a Ward 5 resident, this means so much to me. And of course, as a writer, Sterling Brown is everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Caro, for sharing that personal story with us. How amazing to realize that you were the paper boy for him and the person that he was talking
That's
about.
right.
So, with that, um, as you all can tell, storytelling is so important to this initiative. Having these personal connections and memories and that inspire future generations is so important. And so we want to ask you all that have joined us on the YouTube live stream, can you please share the first word that comes to mind after hearing the story of Sterling Brown from Mr. Carroll? And we'll give a few seconds for that. And then I would open it up to our OP team to also respond.
The first thing that I thought of was just the word first and being able to, I guess, spearhead something as just frankly like inextricable from Black people, which is poetry, and that kind of oral tradition, and then to be able to be celebrated as the first poet laureate of a city that has been, you know, historically a very Black city. I think of, yeah, first like you know, forefather inaugural, like that's something that it sounds like from your story, like his leadership and his creativity and kind of staple in Ward 5
Yeah. Yeah.
is something that'll ring true for as long as possible, and this commemoration project, you know, kind of hopes to reflect that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Anyone else?
And can I add something?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Well, I also wanted to say, you know, that also Sterling Brown, as Marvin was mentioning, but Sterling Brown because he was on Howard's campus and he worked with all these people, it was through Sterling Brown that you get a lot of the Black arts movement poets who really relied on his work to start talking about how poets should be creating work that spoke directly to the people. And so Sterling, as a folklorist, as a scholar, as a poet, um, his work kind of set the foundation for that. And so as I was growing up and meeting some of these people who created the Black arts movement and who helped to influence the music of the era as well as the writing, they all mentioned Sterling Brown as an important figure and talk about how Sterling Brown kind of stripped away the kind of naive romanticism as Sterling talked about in the documentary where he was saying, that a lot of people were writing about the blues but had a distance from it. Sterling Brown, he has a famous poem about Ma Rainey, right? That, of course, later on we know, some of the most famous writers in the country like August Wilson would touch on in order to create their plays. And so, and Sterling Brown was one of he's one of the funniest writers ever. And, I mean, he used to share stories about Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston. And, he, Sterling shared that, he, in the Harlem Renaissance, they were getting stories about, romanticism around Africa, and everybody wrote poems about it rained and Africans was out dancing the rain. And Sterling said, I was in Africa when it rained, we all went in the huts. But he just talked about sort of breaking away from the expectations of a larger culture about what Black culture was and really letting the people of the culture speak to us through the literature. And so I just wanted to, throw that in to say, just as we, end up with, folks like Chuck Brown, who began to speak, right, creating this antiphonal funk music, that funk originates from that blues tradition that Sterling Brown talked about.
Amazing to hear. Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Um, I'm just pausing because I'm just in awe of just like really sitting back and reflecting on just Mr. Brown's legacy, on some of the things that you've shared with us tonight, on just how you brought up Chuck Brown and his influence, and really, really excited to see what the community comes up with in terms of this future design for the commemorative work, and really hoping to continue to tell his story in this way through public art. So definitely appreciative of you for being here with us today. And with that, I will also go ahead and announce our second commemorative work, which is Calvin and Wilhelmina Rolark. Two people that had a profound impact on their community in Ward 8, both as a couple and as individuals, and influence on the district at large. So we'd like everyone to picture it. Washington, D.C., in the heart of the civil rights movement, a city where activism, journalism, poetry, and community building are all working together to push for progress. Calvin Rolark, the founder of the Washington Informer, and Wilhelmina, attorney and council member of Ward 8, are hard at work dedicating their lives to advocacy, education, and Black empowerment. We were delighted to have the daughter of their legacy, Denise Rolark Barnes, here with us. Unfortunately, she could not be here to share, but I would like to give a bit of a background on Miss Rolark Barnes. She is a native Washingtonian, a mother, a publisher, and an entrepreneur. She is also the editor-in-chief of the Washington Informer, succeeding her father, who founded the newspaper in 1964. She serves on the boards of several local nonprofit, community, and municipal organizations, and her family has an extensive legacy in DC. So we will definitely get more information from her and share with you all after the event. But with that, we'd like to move forward and talk about what is next. What is the ask, right? So you've had a lot of information about Commemorate DC. You've been able to hear the personal story from Mr. Carroll about Sterling Brown. You've heard about the Rolarks and their legacy a little bit. And now we kind of want to talk about what do we do with all of that information? What do we do with these stories? What do we do with the community members that are tied to these subjects? Well, with that, we have visioning. So earlier, Marvin had shared a little chart that showed what the process looked like. And with that comes a site visioning assessment. And so there, we will invite you all to go out to the future site of the commemorative work and just really tell us, what do you think should be there? Should we have seating? Should we have a statue? Should we have something that's full of color? Should it be made of glass or metal? Really trying to understand what the community thinks would be a beautiful statement of public art that is tied to the subject's legacy. After that, our talented artists come back in the summer to show their design concepts and get your feedback. And here are some photos from last year. We were out tabling, having numerous community engagement events, all from Anacostia Art Center to Deanwood Community Center and all of the other kind of community places in between, really trying to get feedback on the designs that our amazing artists had showed. After that, we move forward to the Commemorative Works Committee. The designs will go to them for review and approval. And we always like to show this nice little snippet here, kind of showing what the Commemorative Works review process looks like for commemorative work to be both reviewed, approved, and then built in the district. After that, we conclude with a celebration event unveiling the final designs in the fall. These were photos from last year's unveiling event at Sycamore and Oak, again in collaboration with Congress Heights Main Street during Art All Night. It was so amazing to see other creatives come together, to see the community members come out and see the final designs and give other input. We also were happy to table at Stable Arts as well in Ward 5 during one of their events, really to get that feedback again. And so now I'm really happy to pass it over to Ashley, who is our community engagement coordinator, to share more details on how you can stay involved and also have a short Q&A portion.
So I will just add, we are, in addition to this work we're doing in public space, we are kicking off the comprehensive plan. And I invite one of our comprehensive plan engagement folks to tell us a little bit more about it.
Ashley, you're muted if you're speaking.
Unmute me.
Okay, you are now unmuted. We can hear you.
Sorry. How's everyone doing tonight? Okay, I'll say really quickly, don't want to waste anyone's time since I took so long unmuted, even though I was talking. One of the things that we're doing really soon, actually within the next week, we're kicking off. Well, not really kicking off. We've had some meetings with ANC commissioners, but we are going to host one of our larger public event forums at the MLK Library on March 22nd. We're going to have a bunch of boards. We're going to be doing some dot exercises. We're going to really be trying to get inside the minds of the 2050 vision for DC and our residents, and really, we're trying to really incorporate the residents' thoughts and views and hopes and wishes and all that great stuff for the future of DC. And so we're really trying to encourage as many residents to come out and see us, talk to some of the project managers that are going to be managing this project, and then, just have those conversations with us, with other staff members that are to be there also that, specialize in other things, like Zatique for urban design and Felicia and Marvin and And then we'll also have, some folks from historic preservation, development review, and so forth and so on. And then we're going to be following that up with another event on Tuesday, March 22nd from 6 to 8. We'll be at Berry Farms Recreation Center, pretty much doing something similar for those folks that maybe weren't able to come out on Saturday. And then we'll have another meeting back to back. So we're trying to really hit folks here. As you can see, we're trying to do things back to back in that way. It'll be Thursday, March 27th from 6 to 7:30, and that'll be virtual. If you have any questions, you want to find out any more information, everything can be found out at dc2050.com. We also have the QR code, so you can scan that and get easy access to our website. Hit us up on the Instagram and our Twitter, or what is it, X that we're calling it? I'm sorry, apologies for that. I'm trying to keep up with these things. But all of the information that we have will be there. So definitely keep up with that and let us know if you have any questions. We also want to, have you stay in contact with us for the Commemorative Works Project. We want to make sure that we're really getting this message out to folks about, commemoration and what it means to DC. I myself am a Washingtonian by way of Maryland, and I've been living in DC for many, many years. And so some of these projects are very special to me. I know some of these people personally, and so one of the things I'll say really quickly about DC, we have so many heroes and sheroes in DC, and we don't always get the recognition that some of the other super celebrities get, when they're from other places. But looking at the Commemorative Works Project, we're really able to see how many heroes we have in DC, and we're really able to amplify the voices of people that are not heard every day, but are making and doing impactful work that's really meaningful to many of us on the ground and to our residents as a whole. So, as much as you can get the word out, as much as you can, the CW tap at dc.gov. Feel free to hit us up anytime, any questions that you have, any way you may want to be involved. I know many of us, in terms of engagement, we're also, trying to meet residents where they are. So if you know of events, if you have things you want us to come to and table at, just reach out to us and we'll see what we can do. We're definitely open to trying to, be more out there in the community and being out there with the residents. And the last thing I'll say is our publicinput.com/commemorate DC. Our website has all of the information that we've done over time. Some of the projects, as Marvin and Zatik highlighted from last year, that are somewhat still being in the works. So being able to read about those is great. But then also some of the other, folks that have come along the way, and just being able to read about them is great as well. So feel free to stay connected with us and let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for that comprehensive overview of engagement. As Ashley said, if you all want to collaborate with us or come out to the events, we would love to have each and every one of you there. If we can just go back to that last slide, 2 slides before this with our next events. Again, we will be meeting on Saturday, March 29th for Ward 8 from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and April 12th for Ward 5 from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. More details are forthcoming. Please register on our public input website to get that information. But thank you all again so much. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you to our staff. And thank you to those of you who took time out to join tonight. We appreciate your involvement. We look forward to seeing you all in person at these future events. And we hope that you all have a wonderful night.